If you've ever felt completely alone in a room full of people, if small talk makes you want to crawl out of your skin, if you overthink everything to the point of paralysis, psychology says you're not weird. Your brain might just be operating at a level most people never experience, and that intelligence comes with struggles nobody talks about. Today we're breaking down the 8 hidden psychological challenges that highly intelligent people face every single day. Not to complain, not to brag, but to understand why your mind works the way it does. Because once you see the pattern, everything starts making sense. Let's start with something that probably defines your entire social experience. You're bored by most conversations, not because you're arrogant or antisocial, because your brain literally processes information at a different speed and depth than most people around you. Psychology research shows that highly intelligent individuals have what's called high cognitive complexity. Your brain naturally analyzes multiple layers of meaning, considers alternative perspectives, and connects ideas across different domains. This happens automatically, without you even trying. So when someone talks about surface-level topics, weather, gossip, what they watched on TV last night, your brain is starving. It's like asking a Formula One engine to idle in a parking lot. The machinery is built for complex processing, and it's getting nothing to work with. This isn't about being better than anyone. It's about cognitive mismatch. Most people find comfort and connection in small talk. It serves an important social bonding function for them. But your brain needs intellectual stimulation the way other people need social validation. Without it, you don't just feel bored, you feel mentally suffocated. The problem is that society runs on small talk. Work meetings, family gatherings, casual social interactions, they're all built around surface-level exchange. And if you can't or won't engage with that, you get labeled as difficult, cold, or antisocial, when really, you're just operating from a different baseline of what conversation should be. This leads to isolation, because if most conversations drain you instead of energize you, you start avoiding social situations altogether. Not because you don't want connection, but because the kind of connection available doesn't meet the needs your brain has. Here's the second struggle, and this one destroys relationships. You see patterns and contradictions that other people completely miss. Your brain is constantly analyzing subtext, detecting inconsistencies, noticing when someone's words don't match their behavior. Psychologists call this hypervigilant pattern recognition. It's a feature of high fluid intelligence, the ability to identify complex relationships and draw accurate conclusions from incomplete information. Your brain does this automatically, constantly, whether you want it to or not. So when someone tells you they're fine but their body language screams distress, you notice. When someone's story has logical holes, you catch them. When people say one thing but consistently do another, your brain catalogs the contradiction and can't let it go. This makes authentic connection incredibly difficult, because while someone is sharing casually, your brain is running background analysis. You're not trying to be judgmental, but you can't turn off the part of your mind that sees the gaps between what people say and what they mean. Other people experience this as you being overly critical or impossible to fool, and they're not wrong. You are nearly impossible to fool because your pattern recognition is too good. But that means people feel like they can't relax around you, like they're being constantly evaluated. And maybe they are, but not because you're trying to judge them, because your brain won't stop analyzing. This creates distance in every relationship. Romantic partners feel like they can never hide anything from you. Friends feel uncomfortable because you remember every contradiction. Family members accuse you of overanalyzing everything. And they're right, but you can't stop. It's not a choice. It's how your brain processes reality. Third struggle. You overthink everything, but not in an anxious way, in a logical, systematic, examine every angle way. And this makes decision-making absolutely exhausting. Psychology calls this cognitive reflection. People with high intelligence tend to override their first instinct and think deeper before choosing. You don't just react. You analyze consequences, consider alternatives, evaluate long-term implications. For every single decision, what seems like a simple choice to other people becomes a complex calculation for you. Where to eat dinner requires evaluating preferences, dietary restrictions, cost, location, time, social dynamics. What to watch requires considering mood, attention span, whether you'll actually finish it, whether it's worth the emotional investment. Every choice branches into a decision tree that your brain feels compelled to fully explore. To outsiders, this looks like indecisiveness or anxiety, but it's not. You're not afraid of making the wrong choice. You're just processing more variables than most people even notice exist. Your brain refuses to make a decision until it's examined all available information. The problem is that life requires constant small decisions, and your brain treats all of them like they need the same level of analysis. This creates decision fatigue. By the end of the day, you're mentally exhausted, not from doing anything particularly difficult, but from the sheer volume of cognitive processing required to navigate normal life. And people around you get frustrated. They interpret your need to think things through as you being difficult or high maintenance. They don't understand that your brain literally works differently, that what feels like a snap decision to them requires extensive mental processing for you. Fourth struggle, and this one might hurt to acknowledge, you're probably underachieving relative to your intelligence. Not because you're lazy, because nothing feels challenging enough to hold your attention, or everything feels so overwhelming you don't know where to start. Psychology research shows that highly intelligent people often struggle with what's called existential boredom. Your brain needs constant stimulation and challenge to feel engaged, but most jobs, most educational systems, most structured activities are designed for average cognitive ability. They move too slowly, they're too repetitive, they don't provide the intellectual challenge your brain craves, so you start something, realize it's not as interesting as you hoped, and lose motivation. Or you see 10 different ways you could approach a project and get paralyzed trying to choose the optimal path. Or you understand the concept so quickly that the execution feels tedious and you never finish. This creates a painful gap between your potential and your actual achievements. You know you're capable of more. Everyone around you knows you're capable of more. But you can't seem to translate that capability into tangible results because the systems available don't match how your brain works. Society measures success in very specific ways. Degrees, job titles, income, traditional markers of achievement. And if your intelligence doesn't fit neatly into those systems, you get labeled as not living up to your potential, which creates shame and frustration because you're not failing due to lack of ability. You're failing because the game is designed for a different type of player. Fifth struggle. You probably prefer being alone, and people take that personally. They think you don't like them. But the truth is, your brain needs solitude to function properly. Research from the British Journal of Psychology found that highly intelligent individuals report lower life satisfaction with frequent social interaction, not because they're antisocial, but because their cognitive processing requires more mental space than socializing allows. Your brain is always active, always making connections, analyzing patterns, exploring ideas. Social interaction requires you to suppress that internal processing and focus outward on managing the social dynamics, reading the room, participating appropriately. This is exhausting in a way that people with lower cognitive load don't experience. Solitude isn't loneliness for you. It's necessary mental space. It's when your brain can finally run at full capacity without having to simultaneously manage social performance. You think more clearly alone. You feel more like yourself alone. You recharge alone. But society interprets preference for solitude as rejection. Friends feel hurt when you turn down invitations. Family members worry you're depressed. Romantic partners feel neglected. They don't understand that your need for alone time isn't about them. It's about your brain requiring space to process at its natural speed without external interference. This forces you to choose between your own mental well-being and other people's feelings. And often, you choose other people's feelings, which means you end up constantly overstimulated, exhausted, and disconnected from your own cognitive rhythm. Sixth struggle. You doubt yourself constantly, even though you're objectively intelligent. Psychology calls this intellectual humility, and it's actually a sign of higher cognitive function. Research shows that people with high intelligence are more likely to experience self-doubt because they're aware of how much they don't know. The more you understand about any field, the more you recognize the vastness of what remains unknown. This is the opposite of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low ability overestimate their competence. Your intelligence makes you hyper-aware of complexity and uncertainty. Where someone else might be confidently wrong, you're hesitantly correct because you can see all the ways you might be mistaken. You question your conclusions. You look for evidence that contradicts your beliefs. You remain open to being wrong. This is intellectually honest and scientifically sound, but it makes you appear uncertain or insecure. People mistake your careful consideration for lack of confidence. They interpret your willingness to say, "I don't know," as weakness, when it's actually intellectual integrity. Meanwhile, people with less knowledge speak with absolute certainty and get taken more seriously because confidence reads as competence, even when it's completely unjustified. You know more, but you express it with appropriate uncertainty, and society rewards the person who knows less but sounds sure. This creates a situation where you're constantly second-guessing yourself while watching less knowledgeable people succeed through sheer confidence. And that's not just frustrating, it makes you question whether your intelligence is actually an advantage or a liability. Seventh struggle. You're incredibly sensitive to injustice, inefficiency, and stupidity in systems. And you can't just ignore it like other people seem to. Highly intelligent people tend to have strong pattern recognition combined with logical thinking. This means when you see a system that doesn't make sense, your brain can't just accept it. You immediately see how it could be better, why it's failing, what needs to change. The problem is that most systems are resistant to change. They run on tradition, politics, or the path of least resistance. And pointing out logical flaws usually doesn't result in improvement. It results in you being labeled as difficult, disruptive, or a troublemaker. But your brain won't let it go. Every time you interact with the broken system, you experience cognitive dissonance. It genuinely bothers you that something inefficient or illogical continues to exist when the solution seems obvious. This isn't perfectionism. It's your brain being unable to ignore contradictions between how things are and how they should logically be. This makes you frustrated in almost every institutional setting. Schools, workplaces, government systems, healthcare, they all have inefficiencies that seem glaring to you but invisible or acceptable to everyone else. And your attempts to fix or even just point out these issues usually fail, leaving you feeling powerless and misunderstood. Eighth and final struggle. You're existentially exhausted. Your brain never stops. You can't turn off the analysis, the questioning, the constant processing, and sometimes you just want your mind to be quiet. Psychology research shows that high intelligence correlates with increased rumination and metacognition. You don't just think. You think about your thinking. You analyze your own mental processes. You're aware of your awareness. This creates a kind of mental recursion that never fully stops. Even when you're trying to relax, your brain is running background processes, analyzing the show you're watching, making connections to other things you've read, questioning assumptions in the plot, planning tomorrow, replaying conversations from earlier, constructing hypothetical scenarios. It never fully shuts down. This is mentally exhausting in a way that is hard to explain to people who don't experience it. You're tired, but not from doing anything. You're tired from your brain being constantly active, from never getting a true mental break, from the sheer cognitive load of existing in your own mind. People tell you to just relax or stop overthinking as if it's a choice you're making, but it's not. Your brain's default mode is active processing. Relaxation for you requires either intense focus on something engaging or complete mental exhaustion. There's no middle ground where your mind just peacefully rests. So if you recognized yourself in most or all of these struggles, you're not alone. High intelligence isn't just about being good at tests or learning quickly. It's a fundamentally different way of processing reality that comes with genuine psychological challenges most people never consider. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not defective. Your brain just operates at a level that doesn't fit neatly into how society is structured, and that creates friction, isolation, and exhaustion that nobody prepared you for. Understanding these patterns doesn't make them go away, but it does help you stop blaming yourself for struggles that are actually predictable outcomes of how your mind works. You're not failing at being normal. You're succeeding at being you in a world that wasn't built for your cognitive architecture. If this resonated, if you finally feel seen, subscribe. Because on this channel, we don't just explain psychology. We help you understand why you are the way you are